Chapter 650. After returning to the Guangzhou torture room, the first thing Chu Xiu did was to look for Feng Buping for treatment. The Northern Yan side had been dealt with, but whether the Eastern Qi and other sects would respond, Chu Xiu could not guarantee. He could only race against time to keep himself in peak condition. From this point, one could see the value of Feng Buping, this divine doctor of Jianghu. Chu Xiu was helped into the room and walked out on his own 2 hours later, although he was still weak. Mei Qinglian asked, "What are you going to do about the Eastern Qi side?" "Wait," Chu Xiu said in a low voice. "Wait." Mei Qinglian was surprised. Chu Xiu nodded. "The Northern Yan martial arts world is weak. It is all thanks to Nie Renlong that they could unite. I will use all my means to defeat them. But the Eastern Qi martial arts world is different. There are many strong ones. I don't even know how many people in Eastern Qi want to kill me. So, the only thing we can do now is to wait. We will gather all the forces we can and fight." Mei Qinglian frowned. She did not expect Chu Xiu to give her such an answer. "What if you go to the Eastern Qi royal family and talk to the Eastern Qi emperor? Ask the Eastern Qi imperial court to help, just like what you discussed with the Northern Yan emperor, Xiang Long." Chu Xiu shook his head. "It is useless. Although it is the imperial court, the Eastern Qi imperial court, and the Northern Yan court are in different situations. The Northern Yan court had allied with the Northern Yan martial arts world. Now they need to suppress the Northern Yan martial arts world. So, I can use this to persuade Xiang Long, but the Eastern Qi imperial court is the opposite. The imperial court had no contact with the martial arts world. But after losing to the Northern Yan, the Eastern Qi imperial court has the intention to ally with the Eastern Qi martial arts world. The martial arts sect is the national religion of Eastern Qi. The successive leaders of the martial arts sect have the title of Master of Nation. Although I have no grudge with the martial arts sect, I have killed the people of Chunyang Dao sect. The three major Taoist sects may not be on the same side, but there is some relationship between them. Believe it or not, if I go to the Eastern Qi sect and say this nonsense, the Eastern Qi imperial court will kidnap me and send me to the righteous martial arts world. Lu Haochang is a mediocre person. He is a master of the sect. He has no merits except for a long life. He has no merits. Even if I tell him, he will with the Qi imperial court with him." Hearing this, Mei Qinglian frowned. In that case, how much pressure should they face? Seeing Mei Qinglian's expression, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Moreover, even if I have a plan, I don't plan to use it. Do you think the righteous martial arts world has caused such a ruckus because of me? Although I, Chu Xiu, have killed many people, I don't seem to have such a great influence, nor do I attract so much hatred. A large part of the reason is that I am a member of the Yinma clan. If I were a rogue cultivator of diabolism, I'm afraid I wouldn't have caused such a ruckus. A mouse hiding underground suddenly wants to show itself. The existence on the surface will naturally have to see if it has the strength to jump out and bathe in the sunlight." Chu Xiu pointed to himself and said, "I and the entire Guangzhou torture room are a sharp claw of the Yinma clan. The whole Jianghu wants to see what is hidden behind this sharp claw. If it is a mouse, then it will be beaten back. Only a real beast is qualified to enjoy the sunlight on the surface. In fact, in the whole Jianghu, the righteous and the diabolism, loyalty, filial piety, benevolence and righteousness are so complicated. There are morals and rules. But when you remove these messy things, you can only see knives and fists. Your fists are hard, and your knives are sharp. You are qualified to speak and make rules. It's that simple." Just as Mei Qinglian was about to say something, a voice suddenly rang out. "That's right. It's hard for a little doll like you to see things so clearly." Wei Shuya's voice came from outside the door. However, he was helped in by Chu Wuji. His face was a little pale. When they left Su Yun's place, Wei Shuya didn't show that he was injured. Actually, he had been holding on. When they left the Northern Yan, Wei Shuya finally couldn't hold on anymore, and his injuries broke out. Chu Xiu quickly went over and said, "Senior Wei, are you injured? West Chu's divine Dr. Feng Buping is here. Let him treat you." Wei Shuya waved his hand and said, "I'm fine. It's not a big injury. However, the strength of the 9-wonder dragon tree Su Yun is really unfathomable. Su Yun's freedom scripture combines the essence of the Zen and Tantric sects. Its power is terrifying. It's said that part of this cultivation technique is derived from the Subodhi Monastery's freedom scripture. However, it has been evolved by Su Yun to be more powerful than the freedom scripture. I'm useless. My internal organs were heavily injured by Su Yun, and I don't even have the qualifications to fight with that monk. This kind of injury can't be treated quickly, but it won't harm your foundation, so there's no need to see it. I just need to rest for a while. Brat Chu Xiu, you'll have to rely on yourself to get through this final hurdle. Remember what you said just now. Actually, all schemes are fabricated. The simplest way to solve a problem is always to use your fists and knives. Only with a big fist can you win people over. Only with a sharp knife can you make people listen to you and follow the rules you set. Wei Shuya emphasized this point to remind Chu Xiu not to lose himself in this momentary success. This time, although Chu Xiu had used a plan to attack the Morgue Manor, killing Nie Renlong and destroying the Morgue Manor alliance, Chu Xiu wouldn't be able to find such a good opportunity every time. He wouldn't be able to have this kind of luck and not have any accidents. If he was overly confident in his plan and something went wrong, it would be a fatal matter. A good swimmer would drown. Apart from his own strength and confidence, there was nothing in the world that didn't have accidents. Fortunately, Chu Xiu could still be considered to have a clear understanding of himself. He knew exactly what he was capable of. In the Jianghu, it was easy to say that one could do it, but it was actually very difficult to do it. All of them were a little arrogant and had an illusion that they could do it, but in fact, they didn't have a clear idea. Just like Yang Gongdu in the past, he thought that he could stir up the world without relying on strength. In the end, reality taught him a very painful lesson, and he finally learned the importance of strength before he died. Of course, it was useless even if he knew. He had long been smashed into a bloody mist by Divine Lord Luo. Patting Chu Xiu on the shoulder, Wei Wuji said, "I'm old and useless. You'll have to bear the rest by yourself. If you can't win, run. There's nothing shameful about it. As long as you're alive, you can hide for a few years and come out again. Just like me. My sworn brothers all died on the Nine Heavens mountain, but in the end, I, an old man who is afraid of death, was the only one left alive until now." Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Senior Wei, you don't have to be modest. Sometimes living can be more painful than dying. You have the courage to live, and you even stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. This is already shocking enough. As long as you're alive, there will still be people who remember the lineage of Ninth Heaven Mountain, and there will be people who will inherit it. It won't be as tragic as being completely destroyed. If you die, I guess the 5 great sky demons of Ninth Heaven Mountain will only be a legend. We can only listen to the stories of the past." Wei Shuya sighed and didn't say much. He just turned around and left to find a place to recuperate. In the past, he was the only one left of the 5 great sky demons of Ninth Heaven Mountain. Many people in the Yinma lineage said that he was cowardly. Why was he still alive when the others were dead? Only Wei Shuya himself knew that even though he was alive, he was carrying an incomparably heavy burden. It was easy to die, and it was also easy to find those enemies of the past. What was difficult was to carry these burdens and live for the reputation of Ninth Heaven Mountain's 5 great sky demons, and for the entire Yinma lineage. After Wei Shuya recuperated, Chu Xiu also seized the time to recover his strength. He was prepared to maintain himself in peak condition at all times to welcome the incoming enemies. At this moment in the Wei County within the Azure Water Sword sect, the entire Azure Water Sword sect was in an uproar. All the Azure Water Sword sect's martial artists had an angry expression. Of course, the Azure Water Sword sect's current state had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. It was because of something else. Previously, when the Azure Water Sword sect heard the news of Chu Xiu, the disciples were excited for a long period of time, thinking that they could finally take revenge. Chu Xiu crippled Shunbai and even used the identity of Lin Yi to kill Dou Guangchen and dozens of Azure Water Sword sect's disciples. This caused the originally weak Azure Water Sword sect to suffer another heavy blow. It was like adding snow to snow. Therefore, after knowing the news of Chu Xiu, the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples were very concerned about this matter. They were even making preparations to join the Eastern Qis Alliance or the Northern Yan's Alliance. In the end, before they could decide, There was an accident. At this moment, outside of the Azure Water Sword sect, a middle-aged man who was dressed in a crude manner, wearing a gray linen robe and wielding a gigantic saber with a fierce gaze, was leading over 1,000 martial artists to surround the entire Azure Water Sword sect. The middle-aged man spoke in a cold voice. Your Azure Water Sword sect killed my Nujiang Gang's disciple, and you want to let it go? Your Azure Water Sword sect has dominated the entire Wei County for so many years, and your actions are extremely arrogant. You don't have much strength, but your temper is very overbearing. But today, I don't want to spoil you. Lu Gongyuan, I just want an explanation today. If you don't give me an explanation, I don't mind raising your Azure Water Sword sect. Does your Azure Water Sword sect still think that you are one of the 7 sects and 8 factions? To put it bluntly, if it wasn't for Lu Gongyuan's connections, your Azure Water Sword sect would have long fallen out of the 7 sects and 8 factions. After holding the position of the 7 sects and 8 factions for so long, it is time for your Azure Water Sword sect to abdicate. Chapter 651. Some of the sects in the martial world song had never changed for thousands of years. Some of them could only stay on the list for a dozen years before being eliminated. These were all very normal. Every generation had its own talents. Apart from sects like the Great Light Temple, few sects dared to say that they could last forever. The Azure Water Sword sect had been around for a long time, and had over 1,000 years of history. When the Wei Kingdom was still around, the Azure Water Sword sect shared weal and woe with the Wei Kingdom. Now that the Wei Kingdom had fallen and became the Wei Prefecture, the Azure Water Sword sect was declining at a speed visible to the naked eye. Right now, they had even fallen to the point where they were being humiliated by others. This middle-aged man was the leader of the Nujiang Gang, 7-Kill Saber Su Beigui. He could also be considered as someone from the Wei Prefecture. But in the past few years, Su Beigui wasn't that famous. The Nujiang Gang under his command was considered a second-rate faction in the entire Wei Prefecture. Although it wasn't weak, it wasn't strong either. However, Su Beigui seemed to have obtained some sort of fortuitous encounter that allowed him to step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm in just half a year. Moreover, he reorganized the Fury River Gang, slaughtered and annexed everywhere in Wei County, and became the #1 gang in the entire Wei County. If there was anyone in the entire Wei Prefecture that was stronger than the Nujiang Gang, it would definitely be the Wei Prefecture's Azure Water Sword sect. After multiple inquiries and even multiple tests, Su Beigui could finally confirm that the Azure Water Sword sect had fallen, and that Lu Gongyuan wouldn't be able to live for much longer. This time, Su Beigui came looking for trouble because when the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples were buying something in a market in the Wei Prefecture, they accidentally found a treasure and had a conflict with the Nujiang Gang. The item was discovered by the Nujiang Gang first, but the Azure Water Sword sect relied on their strength to be arrogant, and didn't even put the Nujiang Gang in their eyes. They even threatened to cripple them. In the end, when everyone started fighting, the Nujiang Gang suffered a loss. As a result, Su Beigui took advantage of this opportunity to bring his men to find trouble with the Azure Water Sword sect. Since stepping into the martial Dao Master realm, Su Beigui had been developing the Nujiang Gang's influence in the Wei Prefecture. Not to mention other things, the Nujiang Gang had developed quite well. But there was one thing that made him unhappy, and that was the existence of the Azure Water Sword sect. The Azure Water Sword sect had dominated the Wei County for so many years. Even when the Wei Kingdom was still around, the Azure Water Sword sect was the #1 sect in the Wei Kingdom. The local martial artists and factions were used to the existence of the Azure Water Sword sect. Even if the Azure Water Sword sect had declined, everyone still subconsciously believed that the Azure Water Sword sect was still the #1 sect in the Wei County. The Nujiang sect of Su Beigui was strong, but insect was still. Therefore, during this period of time, Su Beigui had been thinking about how to solve this problem. It was only after this incident that Su Beigui realized that he didn't need to go through the trouble of scheming and plotting. So during this period of time, Su Beigui had always been thinking of how to solve this problem. Only after this incident did Su Beigui realize that he didn't need to go through the trouble of scheming. The decline of the Azure Water Sword sect was already a reality. Since he had the confidence to deal with the Nujiang Gang, Then what was the point of doing all these fake things? He would directly attack the Azure Water Sword sect and reveal the truth of the Azure Water Sword sect's decline. He would let everyone in the Wei Prefecture know who was the #1 sect in the Wei Prefecture. All of the Azure Water Sword sect's disciples revealed expressions of anger. How many years had it been? When had their Azure Water Sword sect been attacked? This was a great humiliation. Everyone subconsciously looked into the sect. Where was the sect leader? Why hadn't the sect leader come out? At this moment, the crowd parted. Lu Zongyuan wielded a longsword and walked step by step out of the sect. With every step, his aura became more condensed. When he arrived in front of Su Beigui and the others, Lu Zongyuan's aura was already condensed to the extreme. It even affected the weather in the sky, causing the air to become heavy and stagnant. It was extremely frightening. Su Beigui looked at Lu Zongyuan with a trace of fear in his eyes. He no longer had the arrogance and haughtiness from before. Su Beigui had seen Lu Zongyuan before. At that time, Lu Zongyuan was already the sect leader of the Azure Water Sword sect. With one sword sinking into the river, he shook the entire martial world. Let alone the Wei County, even in the entire martial world, he was considered a famous expert. He was ranked on the honor roll and was extremely glorious. What kind of person was Su Beigui at that time? He was just a rogue martial artist that made a living at the bottom of the martial world in the Wei County. After seeing Lu Zongyuan, he didn't even have any thoughts of replacing him and could only look up to him. Don't be fooled by his arrogant and haughty attitude. But after seeing Lu Zongyuan for real, Su Beigui subconsciously felt a trace of reverence in his heart. Lu Zongyuan gazed at Su Beigui and said indifferently, "It seems that I have been in seclusion for too long. Even some stray cats and dogs don't know who the Wei County belongs to. Attacking my Azure Water Sword sect? Su Beigui, how dare you?" Even the Northern Yen General Long Quan, who guarded the Wei County, didn't dare to do something. Now you have done it. Su Beigui, you are good, very good. Under Lu Zongyuan's imposing manner, Su Beigui's forehead had a trace of cold sweat sliding down. The Azure Water Sword sect had been in the Wei County for a long time. The person in front of him was an expert that was once on par with the influential figures of the martial world. He might be old now, but his imposing manner wasn't something that Su Beigui could easily resist. Lu Zongyuan casually pulled out his longsword and stabbed it into the ground in front of the two of them. He spoke coldly. "We are both from the Wei County. You and I both represent the Wei County. That's why when your new Jiang gang rose up, my Azure Water Sword sect didn't obstruct you. That's because my Azure Water Sword sect can tolerate people. I didn't expect my Azure Water Sword sect's tolerance to be viewed as weakness by you. What a joke. Seeing that you are young and full of vigor, I will give you a chance. Either you receive my sword, and if you don't die, I will let this matter rest. Or you can slap yourself now and get out of the Azure Water Sword sect." Under Lu Zongyuan's powerful gaze, Su Beigui's hand was trembling slightly. The strength of Lu Zongyuan's Drowning River sword could be seen from his nickname. Even though they were both martial Dao masters, it was precisely because of this that Su Beigui knew how huge the gap was in this realm. Lu Zongyuan's Drowning River sword could temporarily split open the Azure Water River. What if this sword slashed on his body? Would he die? Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Slapping himself twice might be embarrassing, but at least he and the new Jiang gang wouldn't suffer any losses. Just as Su Beiguian was about to slap himself and leave, he suddenly raised his head and thought of something. He held the Zamadeo in his hand and looked at Lu Gongyuan. He laughed and said, "Old thing, you are deceiving me. Don't forget, I was also born in the Wei County. I know very well what kind of person you, Lu Zongyuan, and what kind of person your Azure Water Sword sect is. For so many years, your Azure Water Sword sect has dominated the Wei County. Since when did you have the magnanimity to tolerate others? Since when did you, Lu Zongyuan, give others a chance? If your Azure Water Sword sect isn't strong on the outside but weak on the inside, why would you sit back and watch my new Jiang gang rise? If you, Lu Zongyuan, weren't so old that you can't fight anymore, why would you give me a chance to slap myself and leave so easily?" With a sneer, the Zanbato in Su Beigui's hand blossomed with a trace of fierce bloodlight. Boundless killing intent gathered and slashed down. The The blood-red killing intent condensed into a demonic shadow that roared and slashed at Lu Zongyuan with boundless ferocity. Lu Zongyuan's prestige in the Wei County was too strong. It was so strong that when Su Beigui saw him in person, he was immediately at a disadvantage and didn't even dare to say a word. However, since Su Beigui was able to establish such a large family business like the New Jianggang, he naturally wasn't a fool. At the crucial moment he finally reacted. Lu Zongyuan might be bluffing. Of course, he didn't dare to be 100% sure that Lu Zongyuan was putting on an act. But in this world there was always a need to take a gamble. If he was right, he would uncover the truth behind the Azure Water Sword sect and Lu Zongyuan's decline. This Wei County would belong to him and the New Jianggang. Seeing Su Beigui's slash, Lu Zongyuan gripped the sword in front of him and revealed a trace of fatigue and old age. He gathered the dipper chi around his body and thrust his sword forward. The Chun River sword intent was still there and gathered the wind and clouds in all directions. However, the power was pitifully small and didn't have the Chun River power anymore. The sword and saber clashed. Lu Zongyuan was forced to take over 10 steps back. He suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood and instantly became extremely exhausted. Sect Master. All the Azure Water Sword sect disciples gasped out in shock as they looked at the scene in disbelief. Lu Zongyuan was actually vomiting blood from a single slash from Su Beigui. What was going on? Lu Zongyuan helplessly revealed a bitter smile. His hand that was holding the sword was still trembling slightly. Originally, with his age, he could still hold on for a period of time. But in the Xiaofan heaven, Do Guangchen died and all the burdens of the Azure Water Sword sect were on Lu Zongyuan's shoulders. All the messy worries caused Lu Zongyuan's mental state to be depressed. His chi presence was unstable during cultivation, which caused his meridians to be damaged. He made a mistake that even Xiantian realm martial artists rarely made. He was indeed tricking Su Beigui earlier, but unfortunately he failed. Su Beigui still saw through him. Su Beigui laughed loudly and slashed down with his saber again. From today onwards, the Wei County would no longer have the Azure Water Sword sect. His new Jianggang would be the sole ruler. But right at this moment, an astonishing sword chi suddenly surged out from the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. The sword chi soared into the sky and the aura caused everyone to raise their eyebrows. Lu Zongyuan suddenly thought of something. His eyes that were originally filled with despair suddenly blossomed with radiance. At the moment when the sword chi burst out, a white-clothed figure was carried by the sword chi. Along with his movement, be it the Azure Water Sword sect or the New Jianggang's sword-wielding martial artists, their swords were all trembling as though they saw their master. They were no longer under their control, and were carried by the sword chi to that person. With a wave of his hand, countless swords slashed at Su Beigui with the soaring sword chi. Soaring 9 heavens, 10,000 swords returned to origin. Chapter 652. Seeing hope and despair was a great blessing in life. Lu Gongyuan didn't expect to experience this scene in his lifetime. Looking at the boundless sword chi shattering Su Beigui's saber momentum, Su Beigui's horrified eyes seemed to completely defeat him. The saber in Su Beigui's hand shattered, and the sword chi entered his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His eyes flashed with disbelief. Who is this person? For so many years, Kanglan Sword Sect only had one expert, Lu Gongyuan. Who is this guy? But now wasn't the time to think about this. Su Beigui just wanted to escape. At this moment, Su Beigui decisively chose to burn his chi and blood. He used the fastest speed to escape down the mountain. He didn't even care about his new Jianggang members. But as the figure gently waved his hand, countless long swords and sword chi condensed into a giant sword that was hundreds of meters in size. It slashed down. Although the power used wasn't Lu Gongyuan's river-sinking sword, the power wasn't inferior to Lu Gongyuan's peak when he slashed the Kanglan River. No, Su Beigui roared. He hadn't become the top expert in Wei County. He had just stepped into the martial Dao Master realm, and he didn't want to die yet. Endless blood chi and killing intent condensed into a giant blade that slashed down. But in front of the sword that was enough to split the river, everything was shattered. The sky was filled with blood mist, and Su Beigui died without a complete corpse. It was extremely miserable. The figure walked to Lu Gongyuan's side, helped him up, and whispered, "Master, disciple is late." Lu Gongyuan opened his mouth and laughed silently, but in the next moment he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Master!" Shenbai looked at Lu Gongyuan anxiously, and immediately placed his hand on Lu Gongyuan's back. A warm and majestic qi poured into Lu Gongyuan's body. Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said weakly, "Don't waste your energy. My lifespan is coming to an end, and even the gods can't save me. But I am very happy, really happy. You actually did something that countless generations of Kanglin sword sect ancestors couldn't do. The heavens haven't forsaken our Kanglin sword sect. Now have you stepped into the real pellet state?" Shenbai's eyes showed a touch of sorrow. He shook his head and said, "No, just a little bit. Because I don't know how to condense the martial Dao True elixir. I wanted to figure it out myself, but I noticed the movement outside, so I came out early." Hearing this, Lu Gongyuan was stunned. His face revealed an expression that seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. He did not know what to say and could only say that it was fate. There was actually no danger in the first few realms of a martial artist, but only at the step of condensing the martial Dao True pellet would there be some accidents. Although the probability was not high, there were often people who had problems at this step. Therefore, sects like the Azure Billow Sword sect would have very detailed records of condensing the true martial pill, as well as the various experiences of the seniors. Sect like the Guard sect would sect true elixir, but in they and sect shun and a and, but chun a chun he didn't state of sect, but shun, sect, ti chun. He shun he. That's why such an embarrassing thing happened. When Shenbai noticed that Su Beigui was making a move outside, he couldn't care about anything else and had to come out first. But then Lu Gongyuan shook his head and said, "I am too greedy. It's not easy for you to do this. You can easily kill a martial Dao Grand Master with unity of heaven and man." Among the younger generation, except for Zhang Qingjin, who has already stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm, there is only Chu Xiu, who almost became the public enemy of the righteous path and just killed Nie Renlong. Shenbai's heart trembled, and he said after a moment of silence, "Zhang Qingjin has already stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm? Chu Xiu actually killed Nie Renlong?" When Shenbai first walked out of Kanglin Sword Sect, he set Zhang Qingjin as his goal. At that time, Shenbai wasn't arrogant, he was just a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of tigers. But reality gave him a cruel blow. He didn't even see Zhang Qingjin, and he was already crippled by Chu Xiu. As for Chu Xiu, who was once his enemy, he had already killed a powerful player on the Wind Cloud ranking list, the Manor Master of the Loyalty Manor, Nie Renlong, and stirred up a storm in the entire Jianghu. Shenbai instantly felt as if he had missed out on many things. Lu Gongyuan sighed. He also knew that Shenbai had missed out on the most exciting period of time in the underworld. Especially in Xiaofan, Zhang Qingjin fought against a group of young experts, condensed the true thunder elixir, and stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm. This matter was enough for the Celestial Master residents to brag for hundreds of years. If Shenbai didn't have an accident, with his talent and temperament, although he couldn't become Zhang Qingjin, he could at least become like Chu Xiu, one of the members who was challenged by Zhang Qingjin in the past. However, God was fair. Shenbai was well prepared. Now that 10,000 swords returned to origin, although he hadn't reached the real pellet state, his strength was already comparable to most of the real pellet state martial artists. Shenbai helped Lu Gongyuan to sit down in the sect. Lu Gongyuan told Shenbai all the things that happened in the underworld during this period of time, and Shenbai's expression was a little complicated. He had a great hatred with Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu almost crippled him. In the end, this great enemy of his had already stirred up the winds and clouds of the entire Jianghu, while he, Shenbai, was still a nobody. After speaking, Lu Gongyuan sighed and said to Shenbai, "What are you going to do now? You have mastered 10,000 swords returned to origin, and you want to go to the Guanzhong torture room to find Chu Xiu for revenge?" Just as Shenbai was about to nod his head, he suddenly thought of something and spoke in a deep voice. "Revenge can be done at any time, but my Azure Water Sword sect has declined to this day. Even a nobody like Su Beigui dares to challenge us. It is time for my Azure Water Sword sect to once again make a name for itself in the underworld. Since the Northern Yan alliance has been destroyed, then I will go to Eastern Qi and find the Nansong Xiahou clan. My Wei County, after all, was once a vassal state of Eastern Qi. Lu Gongyuan looked at Shenbai with relief. Being able to think about the sect was enough to prove that Shenbai had grown up. He could die without regrets. If it was the previous Shenbai, the other party would definitely impulsively go to Chuxiu for revenge. But now, Shenbai would suppress the hatred in his heart and learn to think about the sect first. Lu Gongyuan could also rest assured to hand over the Kanglin sword sect to him. Help me up and gather all the disciples. Shenbai hesitated for a moment. He vaguely guessed something, but he still gathered all the Kanglin sword sect disciples. Looking at the crowd below, Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, I am old and can no longer wield a sword. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let a despicable person like Su Beigui come knocking on my door. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let down my ancestors. The Kanglin sword sect has declined in my hands. I, Lu Gongyuan, have let down my ancestors. But, fortunately, Shenbai comprehended the secret technique left behind by the ancestors and killed the enemies. It is enough to lead my Kanglin sword sect to stand proudly in the Wei County again. So from today onwards, I will pass on my position to Shenbai, and will no longer be the Kanglin sect master. The disciples below didn't react. The sect master was actually going to give up his position? Shenbai might have vaguely guessed something, but he still couldn't help but say, Master. Lu Gongyuan weakly waved his hand and spoke in a firm tone. Receive the sword. Shenbai hesitated for a moment, but he still knelt down and received the sword from Lu Gongyuan. This sword is Baihong, ranked 87th in the martial world's famous sword manual. It was personally forged by my Kanglin sword sect's 6th generation ancestor. Baihong breaks the waves and advances with indomitable will. Back then, Baihong was a divine weapon, but due to an accident, a portion of its spirituality was damaged, causing it to not be considered a complete divine weapon. However, the weapons in the martial world are never famous because of the weapon itself, but because of its owner. Just like the Sword Monarch City's awakening salamander, which was prepared for the Sword Monarch City Lord, and Mount Longhu's slaying evil, which was the Celestial Master's sword. Baihong is nameless in my hands. I only hope that you can make it famous in the martial world with you in the future. Shenbai nodded. However, the moment he took the fogbow sword, Lu Gongyuan suddenly held Shenbai's hand tightly. Streams of extremely pure vital energy flowed into Shenbai's body. Master! Shenbai shouted, but Lu Gongyuan remained unmoved. In fact, Shenbai's current strength was stronger than Lu Gongyuan, but Lu Gongyuan was also a martial Dao master and Shenbai's master. Shenbai actually couldn't break free from Lu Gongyuan's grasp. In that split second of hesitation, Lu Gongyuan had already poured the last bit of his power into Shenbai's body. Although it could not make him a martial Dao master, it helped him cleanse the power in his body, making it much purer. But it was also because of this that Lu Gongyuan's appearance rapidly aged. In almost an instant, his face was covered with wrinkles like withered tree bark, and his body was filled with an aura of death. Master! Shenbai looked at Lu Gongyuan in disbelief and didn't know why he did this. With Lu Gongyuan's current state, as long as he recuperated for a period of time, he would still be able to live for a period of time. Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said in a weak tone, As a martial artist, it is a tragedy to die in bed of old age. I can't do it anymore. I don't even have the strength to protect you for the last time. This is my last gift to you. Bring it into the martial world, become famous, and revive the prestige of my Azure Wave Sword sect. I, Lu Gongyuan, have not let down the ancestors of the past. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Gongyuan's hand that was grabbing onto Shenbai fell, and he was completely lifeless. Master! Shenbai, who had always been indifferent, had a trace of tears at the corner of his eyes for the first time. The other Azure Wave Sword sect disciples were also crying and shouting for sect master. In all fairness, Lu Gongyuan's conduct in his life was flamboyant in his early years, overbearing in his middle years, and low profile in his later years. But until the moment of his death, everything he did for the Azure Wave Sword sect was worthy of what he said before his death. He didn't let down the ancestors. Chapter 653. The atmosphere in the Guanzhong torture room was very depressing. When they attacked the Northern Yan, most of them were still excited because they were hunters at that time. But now they were about to face the enemies who came to them. They didn't even know how many of them there were. They became the prey, which was not a good feeling. It only took Chu Xiu one day to restore himself to the peak. He didn't choose to continue his closed-door training. Instead, he went to find Wei Shuya. Even if Feng Buping came to treat Wei Shuya's injuries, he wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. He still needed to rest. So, in the Guanzhong punishment hall, Chu Xiu found a place for Wei Shuya to rest. Wei Shuya didn't refuse. This was also his attitude. Even if Chu Xiu failed to protect the Guanzhong torture room this time, at least he, an expert in the true fire refining state, was there. Although he was seriously injured and couldn't protect the Guanzhong torture room, at least he could protect Chu Xiu's life. Although the rules of the Yinma clan were cruel, they were not so cruel that one failure would lead to death. Wei Shuya knocked on the door and said lightly, "Come in." Chu Xiu pushed the door and entered the room. Wei Shuya didn't meditate as Chu Xiu had imagined. Instead, he sat on the bed with his legs crossed, lit an incense burner, and brewed a pot of good tea. He held a book in his hand, looking relaxed and contented. However, Chu Xiu glanced at the book. It was not a scripture of Taoism, Buddhism, or diabolism, nor was it a book of martial arts. On the cover, there were 4 words, "Mercy Child," written in rough handwriting. An erotic novel? Chu Xiu's expression was slightly strange. Wei Shuya, an expert in the true fire refining state, one of the 5 skyscraping devils in the past, and a giant of the diabolism who had stirred up a storm, would read such a thing. Wei Shuya coughed and threw the book aside. His expression didn't change at all. He said in a low voice, "Why do you have time to come here? Are you feeling uneasy?" Chu Xiu, who was sitting opposite Wei Shuya, shook his head and said, "I'm the one who chose this path. The battle hasn't started yet, so why would I feel uneasy? I'm just here to ask Senior Wei for some guidance." Wei Shuya asked, "What is it?" Chu Xiu said solemnly, "Something about the real pellet state." Wei Shuya asked curiously, "Don't you have these things?" He knew that Chu Xiu did not have a master, but some of Chu Xiu's fortuitous encounters and inheritances were not weak. Moreover, after Chu Xiu obtained the Guanzhong torture room, the entire Guanzhong torture room's internal energy secret manual could be read by Chu Xiu at will. There were many martial Dao Grand Masters in the Guanzhong torture room. For example, Chu Kuanga and Guan Siyu, after they stepped into the real pellet state, they would definitely leave some insights in the Guanzhong torture room, so Chu Xiu should understand this realm very well. Chu Xiu said, "I have these things, but I want to know something that Guanzhong torture room doesn't have. The human body has infinite potential. In fact, most people don't push themselves to the extreme before breaking through to the next realm. Although it can be exchanged for more powerful power, their achievements are limited. I cultivate martial arts. Although I can't completely cultivate a realm to a perfect level, at least I want to reach the limit in the entire realm, my own limit. At present, within the realm of the unity of nature and man, there are only a few people who can compete with me. But there are still many things that I haven't explored in the realm of martial Dao Grandmaster. In the past, I once saw a description in Xiaofan Heaven. In the ancient times, after the Taoist of Lingbao Temple stepped into the martial Dao real pellet state, he could condense the glow of Lingbao. Recently, Zhang Qingjin also condensed the golden core of thunder, and it is said that in the Great Light Temple, some people have also condensed things such as 7 treasure relics. Then, does my demon Dao have a way to condense a special martial Dao real pellet? Wei Shuya's expression suddenly condensed when he heard the words. He looked at Chu Xiu and said solemnly, "You want to try to condense this special martial Dao real pellet? I advise you to be cautious. The power of condensing a variant true pellet is not as powerful as you think. It can only be said to be icing on the cake, and there will be no qualitative change. Instead, there is a great risk. Just like the golden core of thunder that Zhang Qingjin condensed. In fact, the method to condense the golden core of thunder is not difficult. And it is not a secret method that is not passed down. Most of the martial artists in the Taoist master mansion can read it at will. But for thousands of years, only Zhang Qingjin has condensed this golden core of thunder, so you can imagine the difficulty. You know very well how Zhang Qingjin condensed the golden core of thunder. The difficulty and danger are not ordinary. Although compared with the ordinary martial Dao real pellet, the true pellet of thunder is indeed strong enough. But after you and Zhongxian step into the real pellet state, your strength will not be too far away from Zhang Qingjin. It is not worth the risk. Chu Xiu said solemnly. Some things are not worth it, but should I do it or not? I just don't want to fall behind others, and I am unwilling to give up any opportunity to become stronger. This time is a disaster, but at the same time, the disaster can also become a chance. If I survive it, I will be reborn and my strength will be greatly improved. Wei Shuya stared at Chu Xiu and said, "What if you can't survive it?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Although I'm used to thinking about defeat before victory most of the time, leaving a way out for myself, there are times when I have to be brave and aggressive. I can only look forward and not backward. I have made up my mind, please help me, Senior Wei." Wei Shuya took a deep look at Chu Xiu and said, "Since it is your own choice, then I won't say anything more. It's good that you know what you are doing." As he said, Wei Shuya took out an ancient book from the space secret box and handed it to Chu Xiu. He said solemnly, "This is the ancient book of the Kunlun devil cult about condensing martial Dao real pellet. It was left by my elder brother. It is the original secret book of the Kunlun devil cult. It is said that Sir Dugu Weiwei personally wrote the way to condense the immortal demon pellet." Wei Shuya's elder brother was naturally the leader of the 5 sky demons of the 9 heavens mountain. This person was from the orthodox Kunlun devil cult, so it was not surprising that he had this thing. After glancing at the contents, Chu Xiu was slightly shocked. Has anyone tried to condense this immortal demon pellet? Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "After the Kunlun devil cult was annihilated, a portion of the items were destroyed. A portion of the items fell into the hands of the righteous sects that attacked the Kunlun devil cult. There was also a portion that fell into the hands of some devil cult martial artists. My elder brother's lineage belongs to the direct line of descent of the Kunlun demon sect. He had seen this thing before, but before he could even try it, he had already given up. You should have seen the content of it for yourself. It's extremely harsh, and it's not something that people of his cultivation realm can achieve. Therefore, as time passed, many people were willing to try it. Chu Xiu, kid, you obtained the inheritance of Patriarch Dugu, which is considered a blessing in disguise. You are more suitable to condense this item than others. But you better think about the consequences first. Once you fail, it will even affect your current realm and foundation." Chu Xiu nodded. He took the secret manual back to his place of seclusion and flipped through it. As he read, the plan slowly took shape in his mind. At the same time, over at the Azure Water Sword sect, following the death of Lu Gongyuan, the entire Azure Water Sword sect was in a state of mourning. Due to the lack of time, there wasn't even time to give Lu Gongyuan a grand funeral. Shenbai had to set off for Eastern Qi, and the sect could only be temporarily handed over to other disciples to take care of. Shenbai always liked to wear white, and now that he was still wearing mourning clothes, it wasn't too out of place. Speaking of which, the degree of the Eastern Qi alliance, be it speed or other aspects, was actually inferior to the Northern Yan alliance. In Northern Yan, Nie Renlong relied on his own reputation, the reputation of the Morgue Manor, and the support of the Great Light Temple, which was why he attracted so many experts. In Eastern Qi, the Xiahou clan might be stronger than the Morgue Manor, but their reputation was far inferior. Furthermore, the martial arts world of Eastern Qi was vast and full of resources. Chu Xiu had only killed a few people. It wasn't like he had gone on a killing spree in all of Eastern Qi. Thus, there were more people watching than actually doing anything. At this moment, in the Nantong Xiahou clan, Xiahou Zhen was rubbing his head with a headache. Many things had happened during this period of time, and he still had to be responsible for the alliance, which made him a complete mess. Every day, there would be martial arts factions of all sizes arriving. Some of them really wanted to join the alliance, while others had the idea of getting a share of the pie. It was either for benefits or for reputation, and some even wanted to compete with him for the position of the alliance leader. All of these gave Xiahozhen a huge headache. The news of the destruction of the Northern Yan alliance had spread, but Xiahozhen was not afraid. Chu Xiu had just destroyed the Northern Yan alliance, and now he came to Eastern Qi to act presumptuously. First, there was not enough time. Second, the environment of Eastern Qi was much more complicated than that of Northern Yan. Chu Xiu coming to Eastern Qi of his own accord was courting death. However, Xiahozhen was a little envious of Nie Renlong. Of course, he was not envious that Nie Renlong was ambushed by Chu Xiu. But he was envious that Nie Renlong had the support of the Great Light Temple, so the alliance could proceed smoothly. On the other hand, he did not have a sect like the Great Light Temple to help him. The people of Chunyang Dao sect were stubborn and self-opinionated. They would rather act alone than join the alliance. There was also the sect of real martial arts. They were the leader of Eastern Qi Dao sect, and even the state religion of the Eastern Qi imperial court. But now they were pretending to be deaf and dumb, as if they did not know about this matter. Xiahozhen had sent people to invite them, but in the end, they did not even see a single person from the sect of real martial arts. At this moment, a disciple came forward and said, "Master, there are people outside who are rushing us again. When will the alliance officially begin?" Xiahozhen frowned and said, "The people are not here yet. Why are they in such a hurry? Have the people we sent to invite the Shangshuaying family and the beggar sect returned?" The disciple nodded and said, "They have returned, but the Shangshuaying family said that they have important matters to attend to, so they can't join the alliance for the time being. They only agreed to sending Bailu to observe the battle." As for the beggar sect, they said that they could not find the sect leader, so they need a month's time. They will give us an answer when they find the sect leader. Xiahozhen waved his hand and snorted. Since they are not willing to come, then the alliance will begin now. Chapter 654. Inside the Xiahou clan's mansion, countless warriors walked in and out. It was much livelier than when the Morgue Manor had formed the alliance. Right now, Xiahozhen was in charge of the Xiahou clan. In truth, there was another ancestor in the clan, but the Xiahou clan cultivated the art of imperial soul, and was not particularly strong in terms of physical cultivation. The ancestor's physical body had already deteriorated. Although the power of his nascent spirit was still powerful, it no longer allowed him to show his face often and waste his energy. Therefore, most matters of the Xiahou clan had to be handled by Xiahozhen and a group of Xiahou elders. Xiahozhen had mixed feelings about Xiahozhen's patriarch. If not for the forefather, he could have ignored those annoying elders and made the house his own. Those old geezers only dared to act so arrogantly because of the forefather's backing. However, the Xiahou clan's reputation would suffer a great blow if the forefather were to lose his position. At least, before the Xiahou clan had a second expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, the patriarch's existence was necessary. In a courtyard that the Xiahou clan had opened up, everything was ready. Xiahozhen walked to the center of the stage and said in a low voice, "Everyone, you must have heard the news from the Northern Yan. Chu Xiu is so arrogant that he has no scruples. Brother Nya of the Morgue Manor has died tragically in his hands. Fortunately, the Eastern Qi martial world is powerful, so Chu Xiu doesn't dare to act presumptuously. However, the blood debt he has committed must be paid. Today, the Xiahou clan will lead the Eastern Qi martial world to form an alliance to attack the Guanzhong torture room and kill Chu Xiu. We hope that everyone can help us." Among the crowd below, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious blue clothes immediately stood up and said, "Patriarch Xiahou is right. Chu Xiu is a cruel man. In the minor mortal heaven, the Lu clan did not provoke him, but we were all killed. This is too much." The enmity between the Gaoping Lu family and Chu Xiu was born in the little mortal world. Inexplicably, the people of the Lu family were all killed by Chu Xiu. This made the people of the Lu family gnash their teeth in hatred. Later, when Chu Xiu's identity was exposed, they realized that their enemy was not far away. Some of the people who supported the Xiahou family agreed, but at this time, there was a different voice. Patriarch Xiahou is right. Chu Xiu should be eliminated. This is related to the face of the orthodox martial world. But don't blame me for my harsh words, Patriarch Xiahou. What right do you have to be the leader of the alliance? None of those present are any less important than you, Patriarch Xiahou. The person who spoke was the master of the Hidden Sword Villa, Cheng Tingshan of the Heartless Sword Tomb. Although the Hidden Sword Villa was not very powerful, it was still one of the 5 major sword sections. It was not weaker than the Xiahou family. Xiahou Zhen frowned. I'm the one who made the alliance happen. Everyone here knows how much effort House Xiahou has put into it. Cheng Tingshan, you want to take the position of leader with just one sentence? Don't you think the Hidden Sword Villa is taking it for granted? Cheng Tingshan shook his head and said, It's not that I'm taking it for granted, but there are so many aces of the Eastern Qi martial world here. Master Xiahou, you are the leader of this alliance. No matter what, you should ask everyone's opinion, right? As he spoke, Cheng Tingshan pointed at the people present. Brother Yuqi of the White Tiger Hall, Brother Mo of the Mo family of Shangyang, Brother Wang Shuangjuan of the Twin Yang swords representing the Crown Prince, Smiling Miller, Qi Jian of the Great Prajna Temple, Brother Qi Yuanli of the Wind Sweeping House, Young Master Ing Bailu of the Shangshui Ing family, and Senior Luo Jionian of the Luo family of the Wu County. Patriarch Xiahou, forgive me for being blunt, but among these people in terms of status, strength, and seniority, you are not number 1. I'm afraid you won't be able to convince everyone to accept you as leader. In fact, among these people, not everyone had come because they had a grudge against Chu Xiu. For example, Yu Qifeng of the White Tiger Hall was purely here to watch the show. However, because he was an Eastern Qi, and the White Tiger Hall was neither a righteous nor a demonic sect, he joined the alliance because he had the intention of getting closer to the righteous martial world. But when he arrived, whether he would make a move or not would depend on the situation. The Mo family of Shangyang was the same. They knew of the friendship between Mo Tianlin and Chu Xiu. Although this friendship was not enough for the Mo family to side with Chu Xiu, the Mo family's attitude towards joining the alliance was very ambiguous. As for the Crown Prince, even Xiahou Zhen did not expect him to send someone. Twin Yang Swords Wang Shuangjuan was a middle-aged man with 2 swords on his back and a cold expression on his face. In the past, this person was a somewhat famous itinerant cultivator in the land of Eastern Qi. His strength was extraordinary, but he had not appeared in recent years. No one expected him to reach the martial arts grandmaster realm as soon as he appeared. He had even become the Crown Prince LV Longji's confidant, which was somewhat unexpected. This time, LV Longji also hated Chu Xiu very much, so he used his power to intervene in the affairs of Jianghu. During the trip to the Guanzhong torture room, Yang Gongdu and Eunuch Chen were killed by Divine Lord Luo and Chu Xiu respectively. However, LV Longji blamed this on Chu Xiu. Divine Lord Luo was far away in the heavenly gate of Western Kunlun. Even as the Crown Prince, LV Longji did not dare to find trouble with an expert of that level. So he could only find trouble with Chu Xiu. Moreover, Yang Gongdu's death really made LV Longji's heart ache. It was not that he had any gay relationship with Yang Gongdu, but Yang Gongdu's existence was simply a savior to LV Longji. As the Crown Prince, he was pressured by his younger brother step by step, and he was often in a weak position, so there were fewer and fewer people in the Eastern Qi imperial court who were willing to support him. Fortunately, Yang Gongdu's appearance helped him to reverse the situation. Even Wang Shuangjuan, a master in the supreme power realm, was roped in by Yang Gongdu. As a result, Yang Gongdu's death was equivalent to losing an arm of LV Longji. As for Smiling Miller Qi Jian, although he did not have much hatred for Chu Xiu had a deep hatred for Buddhism. It just so happened that Qi Jian's Great Prajna Temple was also in Eastern Qi, so Qi Jian had a reason to attack. There was also Luo Jionian, who also hated Chu Xiu to the core. In the past, he wanted to marry Luo Feiheng to the Shangshuiying family, but it was Chu Xiu who stirred up trouble in the end, which led to the failure of the plan. However, the Luo family had declined, and Luo Jionian was conceded that he could not do anything to Chu Xiu, who had the protection of the Guanzhong torture room. So he had not come to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. This time, after learning that Xiahou Zhen had formed an alliance, Luo Jionian took the initiative to come without Xiahou Zhen's invitation. As for Ing Bailu and Qi Yuanli, They were actually just here to watch the show. The Shang Shuai-ing family had always been too lazy to participate in such things. This time, they had symbolically sent Ing Bailu here just to show respect to the Xiahou family. Otherwise, if the Shang Shuai-ing family really wanted to make a move, they had no lack of experts in the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It was the same for Wind Sweeping Tower. However, if the Shang Shuai-ing family was just here to watch the show, Wind Sweeping Tower was here to watch the show. For Wind Sweeping Tower, this was a major event in the Jianghu, so they had to be here personally to record it. Qi Yuanli had also volunteered to come. He had been in contact with Chu Xiu for a long time, and they had worked together before and traded information. However, he did not expect Chu Xiu to be Lin Yi from the Yinma clan. This kid had hidden his identity well. Xiahou Zhen looked at Cheng Tingshan coldly. As soon as these words came out, he was immediately rendered speechless. How was he supposed to respond? Could it be that everyone here was weaker than him, and only he was qualified to be the alliance leader? After a moment of silence, Xiahou Zhen waved his hand and said, "Since Villa Master Cheng thinks that I'm not worthy to be the alliance leader, then may I ask who else wants to be the alliance leader? As long as there's someone here who thinks that he's stronger than me, fine, I'll step aside and let him be the alliance leader. Of course, the prerequisite is that this person has to be able to convince the masses." Xiahou Zhen was taking a step back in order to advance. It was impossible for him to convince the masses, but what about the others? Wouldn't it be the same if someone else stood on this stage? Seeing that the tension between the two sides was getting stronger, Qi Yuanli stepped forward and said with a smile, "Everyone, we're going to the alliance to deal with other people, not to kill each other. It would be a joke if we started fighting before we even saw the enemy. How about this? I have an idea. Let's not talk so much nonsense between us. Let's directly decide the victor based on strength. Whoever wants to be the alliance leader can stand on the stage. We'll fight one round after another, and whoever can stand until the end will be the alliance leader. What do you all think?" Everyone present looked at each other, but no one objected. Deciding the victor with fists was the simplest thing to do. Cheng Tingshan laughed loudly and said, "Since that's the case, then I'll take the first round. Patriarch Xiahou, why don't you and I fight first?" Among the people present, there were only a few who could be ranked on the honor list. Although the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique was magical, Cheng Tingshan was confident in his sword techniques. Moreover, the outcome of this round did not matter to Cheng Tingshan in the first place. The alliance was not established by Cheng Tingshan. If he lost this round, he would lose. He would not lose anything. However, if he won, the position of the alliance leader would belong to him. Then, the Hidden Sword Villa's reputation would definitely skyrocket. It would be a free benefit. Therefore, Xiahou Zhen's face was a little dark. Obviously, he had also thought of this. Fighting like this would be disadvantageous to him. He had spent so much effort to establish the alliance, but when it was time to reap the rewards, someone else would be the first to reap the rewards. This was ridiculous. However, at this moment, a young man dressed in white mourning clothes and holding a sword suddenly walked in from the crowd. He said in a deep voice, "If no one comes on stage, I would like to experience Senior Cheng's sword techniques." Chapter 655. In all fairness, Shenbai's reputation in the pugilistic world wasn't that great. The Azure Water Sword sect had been declining for so long, and only Lu Gongyuan still had some reputation in the pugilistic world. As for the rest, whether it was Shenbai or the others, they could only be considered as nobodies. Seeing a martial artist who was only at the unity of heaven and man realm in mourning attire, Cheng Tingshan frowned and berated. "Which sect's junior is here to cause trouble? Didn't your elders teach you how to respect your juniors? The disciple might not be sensible, but is the master not sensible? Get down, don't mess around." Hearing Cheng Tingshan calling him master, Shenbai's eyes revealed a cold glint, but his expression didn't change at all. He held his sword and said in a deep voice, "Previously no one mentioned that the unity of heaven and man realm can't participate in the contest. Could it be that Senior Cheng doesn't even dare to face a junior's challenge? I am Azure Water Sword Sect, the new sect master, Shenbai. Concealing Sword Villa, Villa Master Cheng, Please enlighten me. At this moment, Shenbai wasn't challenging Cheng Tingshan as a junior, but as the Azure Water Sword Sect's sect master. Cheng Tingshan frowned. You are the new sect master of Azure Water Sword Sect? What nonsense! Where is Lu Gongyuan? Shenbai said in a deep voice. My master has passed away, so I am the new sect master of Azure Water Sword Sect. Isn't this qualification enough to challenge Villa Master Cheng? Hearing that Lu Gongyuan was dead, everyone was in an uproar. Cheng Tingshan's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. In all fairness, Lu Gongyuan was a formidable figure. When he was at his peak, even Cheng Tingshan didn't dare to make a move against him. But now that Lu Gongyuan was dead, and the Azure Water Sword Sect had declined to the point of pushing a unity of heaven and man realm martial artist to be the sect master, this was simply a joke. The Azure Water Sword Sect was still one of the 7 sects and 8 schools because of Lu Gongyuan's existence. Now that Lu Gongyuan was dead, the Azure Water Sword Sect would probably be removed from the pugilistic world soon. This new sect master of Azure Water Sword Sect might be talented, but he was still too young and inexperienced. At this time, instead of quickly hiding the news of Lu Gongyuan's death and cultivating behind closed doors to the real pellet state, he actually ran around and actively spread the news of Lu Gongyuan's death. This was simply digging his own grave. Cheng Tingshan snorted coldly. If Lu Gongyuan was still alive, he wouldn't let you do such a stupid thing. Since you're just a junior, I'll give you a chance. Leave. Shenbai shook his head and said, Sorry, I don't want this opportunity. A hint of anger appeared on Cheng Tingshan's face as he said, I gave you face but you don't want it. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Tingshan had already unsheathed a long sword in his hand. It shone with a dazzling brilliance, and starlight scattered in all directions when the sword was unsheathed. Each streak of starlight contained an astonishing sword intent. The long sword in Cheng Tingshan's hand was a divine weapon. It was ranked 45th in the martial world's famed sword manual, Falling Star. Its grade was much higher than Shenbai's White Rainbow. There were 108 famed swords in the world, and a small half of them were kept in the Hidden Sword Villa. Shenbai closed his eyes slightly. This was his first battle representing Azure Water Sword Sect in the martial world. Even if he had to face an expert on the reputation list, the Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master, Cheng Tingshan, he couldn't lose. If Chu Xiu could kill Nie Renlong, then he could also defeat Cheng Tingshan. With such a resolute mood, Shenbai's White Rainbow was already unsheathed. It was such a casual sword strike, but it contained Shenbai's extreme concentration of blood and sweat. It made his face faintly reveal a trace of morbid paleness. As the sword thrust out, many of the sword-wielding martial artists found that the long swords in their waists were actually trembling and flying out of their control towards the arena. Apart from the martial Dao masters who were able to suppress their own weapons, the rest of the sword-wielding martial artists could only watch as their long swords flew out of their hands and circled around Shenbai. Countless sword hums resonated throughout the heavens and earth. Thousands of long swords were in the air, revolving and dancing in a dense manner. As Shenbai's sword descended, the countless long swords were mixed with thousands of sword qi as they continuously attacked Cheng Tingshan. The prowess was simply incomparably horrifying, causing everyone's scalp to go numb. Cheng Tingshan was also incomparably terrified. What are these things? The sword in his hand quickly changed from attacking to defending, but it was attacked by the countless long swords and sword qi, causing him to retreat step by step. Cheng Tingshan's strength was still considered strong. Previously, Su Beigui couldn't even resist against the powerful sword qi of the sect origin swords, and was instantly killed. With a long sword in hand, Shenbai suddenly took a step forward. Countless long swords were gathered together by the formless sword qi, forming a giant sword that was hundreds of meters in size. It came crashing down at Cheng Tingshan. With a loud bang, the arena was directly smashed into pieces. Cheng Tingshan's figure was forced back several tens of meters before he stopped. His face was already pale with a tinge of red, and it seemed very strange. On Cheng Tingshan's fallen star sword, there were traces of tiny cracks. Shenbai's attack just now had actually almost shattered his fallen star sword. Shenbai sheathed his long sword with a pale face and said in a deep voice, Manor Lord Cheng, thank you for letting me win. Everyone present was dumbfounded to see this scene. One move. This Shen Bai actually defeated Cheng Tingshan in one move. This strength was a little too terrifying. When did the Azure Water Sword sect have such a person? This person was probably comparable to the top 3 on the Longhu roll. On the side, Ing Bailu also looked at Shen Bai curiously. To be honest, he had only seen 2 people who could reach Shen Bai's level of explosive power. One was Zhang Qingjin, and the other was Chu Xiao. Even Zhong Xian was slightly inferior. Since the Azure Water Sword sect had such a genius, why didn't they bring him out earlier? If this Shen Bai had appeared in the Xiaofan heaven, he would definitely be in the top 3 on the Longhu roll. Ing Bailu was purely sent out to be a mascot. He had no intention of fighting at all, but he didn't expect to get such an unexpected reward. This Shen Bai was so much more interesting. Of course, Cheng Tingshan, who had been sent flying, didn't find it interesting at all. He threw the fallen star sword back into the secret space box and took out another long sword. It turned out to be a divine weapon as well, which made everyone's eyes turn green with envy. Some people even thought that if they killed Cheng Tingshan, would they be able to obtain all the items in Cheng Tingshan's secret space box? In fact, Cheng Tingshan's defeat just now was just a mistake. He didn't expect Shen Bai to be so strong. That was why he made the first move without checking, and it was too late to defend himself. That was why he ended up in such a sorry state. Just as Cheng Tingshan was about to make another move, Xia Hozhen sneered. Cheng Tingshan, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. You've lost this round. If you don't win the first time, you'll fight again. Are you trying to be shameless here without caring about anything? Your Hidden Sword Villa can be shameless, but this time, our Eastern Qi Alliance can't afford to waste any more time. Although the duel did not state whether being blasted out of the arena was considered a loss, Cheng Tingshan had been blasted away by Shen Bai's sword in front of everyone's eyes and fell off the arena. If this was not considered a loss, then it was indeed a little unreasonable. Cheng Tingshan's face was flushed red. He was the master of the Hidden Sword Villa and a senior in the martial world. But today he lost to a junior like Shen Bai in front of everyone. This was a great humiliation. Everyone present didn't care if Cheng Tingshan underestimated his opponent, or if he still had a trump card. In their eyes, Cheng Tingshan had lost. With a heavy snort, Cheng Tingshan walked to the side and sat down with a dark expression. Xia Hozhen laughed. I didn't expect the Azure Water Sword sect to have such an outstanding person like Shen Bai. Sect Master Lu may have passed away, but his spirit in heaven will be gratified. Shen Bai has won this round. Who will be the next one? Shen Bai suddenly said, I'm not here to fight for the position of alliance leader. Based on my seniority and experience, I don't have the qualifications to be the leader. Since Patriarch Xiaohe was the initiator of this alliance and spent so much effort on it, it only makes sense that he should be the leader. If Lu Gongyuan could see Shen Bai's performance today, his spirit in heaven would definitely be gratified. In the past, Shen Bai was a man of few words, simple and crude, and usually didn't consider the consequences. But now, Shen Bai had learned to do things with the mentality of a true sect master. The Azure Water Sword sect was weak, and Shen Bai was a junior. Even though he was strong enough, but if they really fought, everyone here might not lose to him. Cheng Tingshan only lost because he underestimated his opponent. Therefore, if he insisted on fighting for the position of alliance leader, Shen Bai might not have a good ending. On the contrary, he used his strongest ability to defeat Cheng Tingshan the moment he showed up. He won everyone's respect and made a name for the Azure Water Sword sect. If he took a step back, he would gain Xia Hozhen's favor. Why not? As expected, after hearing Shen Bai's statement, Xia Hozhen immediately revealed a trace of delight. The head of the Lu family was on Xia Hozhen's side. When he heard that, he immediately stood up and said, Sect leader Shen is right. Brother Xiaohe has been running around for the sake of the alliance, which is why we are all gathered here. In terms of understanding of the alliance, none of us here can compare to Brother Xiaohe. It is indeed a bit too much to let someone else be the alliance leader. As Cheng Tingshan was humiliated and severely injured, no one stood up to object. The one with the most thoughts was Cheng Tingshan. The rest were either undecided and were prepared to watch the show, or they had a grudge against Chu Xiao. It didn't matter who the alliance leader was, as they only wanted to kill Chu Xiu. Therefore no one stood up to object, except for Cheng Tingshan, who still had a dark expression. Xia Hozhen revealed a smile, stood in the center, and cupped his hands together, saying, "Fortunately, I received everyone's favor and became the leader of this alliance. I will definitely lead everyone to kill Chu Xiu, that demon of the demonic path, and destroy the Guanzhong Discipline Hall, returning justice to the martial world." Chapter 656. Outside Guanzhong City. The bustling Guanzhong City, which used to be in the center of the three countries, was dead silent. There were almost no merchants coming and going. The merchants who came and went from the three countries were not idiots. The pugilistic world was in a state of panic. No one knew if Chu Xiu could survive this. At this moment, it had even escalated to a battle between the orthodox martial arts world and the Yinma clan. Perhaps in the end, even the true fire spirit refinement realm experts would take action and destroy the Guanzhong torture room. If they still walked into the Guanzhong torture room now, they would be courting death. Of course, according to insiders, there were already true fire spirit refinement realm experts taking action in this battle. They were the first seat of the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zen Hall, Su Yun, and the Yinma clan's Wei Shuya. However, because there were no witnesses, most people thought it was just a rumor. Some of the Guanzhong torture hall martial practitioners standing on the walls of Guanzhong City all had grave expressions. Those who should have escaped had already escaped. Those who didn't escape were not loyal to Chu Xiu, but to the entire Guanzhong torture room. As for some people, they were reluctant to give up their positions and status. They didn't want to leave and wanted to bet on Chu Xiu winning. Chu Yuanqing was also standing on top of the city wall. He had a worried look on his face as he looked at Chu Xiu and said, "You said that you wouldn't lie to me. What is going on now?" This is a grudge between the Yinma clan and the orthodox sections. In the end, the entire Guanzhong torture room has been dragged into this. If you lose, the entire Guanzhong torture room will be destroyed. Chu Xiu said calmly, "Brother Chu, don't be silly. Don't you understand? The time for the Guanzhong torture room to be neutral has passed. The Guanzhong torture room needs to find a backer. It's either righteous or demonic. Even if I'm not in the Guanzhong torture room, without hall leader Guan, do you think the Guanzhong torture room can protect its foundation?" In the end, he still had to choose a side. "Brother Chu, do you really not know whether to rely on me or those righteous sects? Others may not know what happened to Lord Chu Kuanga back then. But don't tell me you don't know?" Chu Yuanqing sat down dejectedly, because he was very familiar with the conduct of those righteous sections. Among the people that Chu Kuanga had offended in the past, there were actually more righteous sects than demonic sections. In the past, the Hidden Devil clan kept a low profile, and almost never clashed with Chu Kuanga. The Bright Demon clan was not very high profile. Under the suppression of the entire orthodox martial world, they were almost not arrogant enough to cause trouble all day long. Only those so-called righteous sects had done a lot of arrogant and domineering things, taking advantage of their power to bully others. Chu Kuanga had either stopped them or clashed with them, and the two sides had formed a lot of hatred. "Are you sure you can survive this?" Chu Yuanqing looked at Chu Xiu with hope in his eyes. At this time, he somewhat regretted taking over the position of hall master. In fact, to put it bluntly, Chu Yuanqing was not bad in nature, but he was a little arrogant and had little ambition. If Chu Xiu had not used the heart demon rotation technique to influence Chu Yuanqing would not have agreed to take over the position of hall master. If not for the position of hall master, he could have left the Guanzhong torture room with his family property. But now he had to accompany Chu Xiu to wait for death. This feeling was not good. Looking ahead, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Confidence? Except for God, no one dares to say that they have absolute confidence in everything they do." Just as Chu Yuanqing was about to say something, the martial artist standing on the city wall suddenly shouted nervously, "They're here!" Everyone was shocked and quickly looked down. However, to their surprise, there were only dozens of Taoist priests, and they were not from the Eastern Qi Alliance. This time, the person who brought the people was Su Yangzi of the Chunyang Dao sect. He did not wait for the people from the Eastern Qi Alliance to come with him at all. Instead, he came alone with his people. Seeing this scene, even Chu Xiu had a strange expression on his face. He had seen stupid people, but he had never seen someone as stupid as Su Yangzi. He actually did not care about the faces of so many forces in the Eastern Qi Alliance, and came first with his people. Did he mean that the forces in the Eastern Qi Alliance were not worthy of being on his side? Moreover, it was unknown whether Su Yangzi was arrogant or conceited. He thought that he, a martial Dao master, and dozens of disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect could destroy the Guanzhong torture room and kill him. Chu Xiu? What a joke! Su Yangzi looked at Chu Xiu, who was standing on the city wall, with a flash of a complicated expression in his eyes. His senior brother had died in the hands of this junior, and his reputation had been ruined. Naturally, Su Yangzi wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. However, the Chunyang Dao sect had been exterminating demons and defending the Dao for so many years, even at the expense of their own strength. In the end, after Zhen Yangzi died, most people in the underworld were only gloating. This made Su Yangzi feel a little disappointed. He did not know whether what he had done all these years was right or wrong. However, Su Yangzi soon threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. He looked at Chu Xiu, who was on the city wall, and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you know what kind of situation you're in now. Today, I'm not here on behalf of the Chunyang Dao sect to exterminate demons and defend the Dao. I'm only here to settle my personal grudge. Senior brother Zhen Yangzi died in your hands. Today, do you dare to fight with me and settle the grudge? If you win, the grudge between you and the Chunyang Dao sect will no longer have anything to do with you. This time, the Eastern Qi Alliance attacked you, and the Chunyang Dao sect will not intervene. If you lose, there's naturally no need to say anything. The current you can't afford to lose. Do you dare to fight with me?" Su Yangzi shook off the Eastern Qi Alliance, and came to find trouble with Chu Xiu alone. In fact, it was not because he did not know what was going on and came to seek his own death. Naturally, he had his own plans. In the past, Zhen Yangzi was killed by Chu Xiu in Xiaofeng Tian, which also caused the reputation of the Chunyang Dao sect to plummet in the Jianghu. People said that the martial Dao masters of the Chunyang Dao sect were not even comparable to the junior martial artists. They completely ignored the fact that Zhen Yangzi was actually killed by Chu Xiu and Li Feilian. Therefore, this time, Su Yangzi not only wanted to take revenge for his senior brother, but he also wanted to use this matter to restore the reputation of the Chunyang Dao sect. Didn't you say that the martial Dao masters of the Chunyang Dao sect were not as good as the junior martial artists? In that case, he would defeat Chu Xiu one-on-one in front of everyone. This way, it would be better than any rebuttal. Therefore, the question now was whether Chu Xiu would agree or not. In Su Yangzi's opinion, Chu Xiu would agree. If Chu Xiu agreed now, it would be enough for him to face him alone. If he did not agree and the Chunyang Dao sect joined the Eastern Qi Alliance, Chu Xiu would have to face more opponents. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at Master Su Yangzi and suddenly burst into laughter. Su Yangzi frowned and said, "What are you laughing at? Are you going to agree or not?" Chu Xiu laughed and said, "I'm just laughing at some people for taking it for granted. Su Yangzi, the people of the Chunyang Dao sect are not good at using their brains. Since you're not good at this, don't use it. Otherwise, you'll only make a fool of yourself. Are you going to defeat me on the spot and clear the name of the Chunyang Dao sect?" Su Yangzi frowned even more. It seemed that he did not expect his thoughts to be seen through by Chu Xiu so easily. Reality proved that the length of one's life had nothing to do with how smart one's brain was. People like Su Yangzi had grown up in the pure Yang Dao sect since he was young, so he had already developed a simple and direct personality. He was still too inexperienced to play mind games with Chu Xiu, who had been at the bottom of the Jianghu. Su Yangzi snorted and said, "So what if I am? You don't dare to agree?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why should I agree? Su Yangzi, since you came here alone to court death, don't blame me. Attack." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's figure landed on the city wall. Then faceless demon sects Mr. Liu, Chu Wuji, Mei Qinglian, and the others attacked Su Yangzi one after another. In an instant, a monstrous demonic aura rushed into the sky. Su Yangzi's expression suddenly changed and he said, "Chu Xiu, by doing this, aren't you afraid that you will fight to the death with the Chunyang Dao sect?" Chu Xiu just snorted and did not say anything. Ever since he killed Jin Yangzi, he and the Chunyang Dao sect had become mortal enemies. Even if he really finished off Su Yangzi one-on-one, and Su Yangzi kept his promise, it did not mean that the other people from the Chunyang Dao sect would keep their promise like Su Yangzi and not look for trouble with him. Therefore, once the people from the Chunyang Dao sect looked for trouble with Chu Xiu, with Chu Xiu's personality, he would definitely not back down. At that time, they would become mortal enemies again. Therefore, it was better to kill them now. Su Yangzi fiercely gritted his teeth, and the pure yang energy around his body exploded. The pure yang Dao sword in his hand shone with a dazzling light, and a majestic blood qi was integrated into the Dao sword. He wanted to fight to the death with Chu Xiu and the others. However, on Chu Xiu's side, the three people were not weak martial Dao masters. Chu Xiu's strength was even higher than that of a martial Dao master. The moment they exchanged blows, the pure yang Dao sword had already been forcefully shattered. However, at this moment, a dazzling sword light suddenly fell. The extremely hot pure yang sword qi extinguished everything. The monstrous demonic flames were like melting snow under the pure yang sword qi, extinguishing them one after another. Chu Wuji, Mr. Liu, and Mei Qinglian were all martial artists who only cultivated demonic techniques. Therefore, the pure yang sword qi was extremely lethal to them, and actually forced them to retreat. Only Chu Xiu could resist for a while because he cultivated the secret techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic Tao. However, he was also forced back by the pure yang sword qi. In front of Su Yangzi, a sloppy middle-aged Taoist was holding a simple longsword with Tao patterns engraved on it. He stood there lazily and smiled at Su Yangzi. Martial nephew Su Yangzi, what did I say? Your glabella is dark, and I'm afraid it's a bad omen. I'm very worried about you, so I specially invited the patriarch's pure yang sword to save you. How about it? Are you touched? Chapter 657. Su Yangzi looked at Shi Yunzi in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He said hesitantly, Shi Yunzi, martial uncle, why are you here? And your strength? The Shi Yunzi in front of him was like a different person from the Shi Yunzi in his memory. Although his appearance and personality were exactly the same, the Shi Yunzi in front of him was already at the peak of real pellet state, far beyond him. There was also the pure yang sword in Shi Yunzi's hand. This sword seemed to be simple and unadorned, and there was nothing special about it. However, this sword was the sword of the former Chunyang Dao sect's founder, Lu Chunyang. It was ranked 5th in the Jianghu's famous sword manual. It required extremely pure yang aura to be used. In the Chunyang Dao sect, only the current Chunyang Dao sect's leader was qualified to use the pure yang sword. Su Yangzi never expected that Shi Yunzi could also use the pure yang Dao sword. Looking at the shocked Su Yangzi, Shi Yunzi said calmly, I say, martial nephew Su Yangzi, do you really think that my cheap master took me in as his disciple before he died just because he thought I was smart, straightforward, and adorable? No matter what, I have called you my nephew for so many years. At critical moments, you still need to rely on me to support you. Chu Wuji looked at Shi Yunzi and said in a deep voice, it is said that the previous Chunyang Dao sect's leader found a genius with a natural pure yang Dao body, and accepted him as a disciple, but there has been no news. That person should be you, right? Your pure yang Dao sect's lineage is really lucky. You've clearly declined, yet you can still find an existence like you. Shi Yunzi shook his head and said, even the sun and the moon have their ups and downs, let alone a sect. I think it's my fortune that my cheap master accepted me. At least I don't have to be a servant who serves tea and drinks for others all day long. Of course, other than the fact that I can't get close to women and break my primordial yang Dao body, I'm actually living quite comfortably in Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and sighed. I have no enmity with you, nor do I have any enmity with your lurking demon clan. However, as a member of the pure yang Dao sect, the sect's enmity naturally becomes my enmity. I was too lazy to make a move, but now that I have appeared here with the pure yang sword, let's put an end to this matter. The people of the pure yang Dao sect can't die in vain. Although Zhen Yangzi is indeed stubborn, he is still a member of the pure yang Dao sect. Chu Xiu, even if you don't believe what Su Yangzi said just now, you can fight with me now. With my position in the pure Yongdao sect, no one will go against what I said. Shi Yunzi spread his hands and said, then I'll tell senior brother sect leader. How can he not know how to respect the old and cherish the young? Shi Yunzi shrugged and said, then I'll tell senior martial brother sect master. What can we do if he doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young? Shi Yunzi spread his hands and said, then I'll tell senior brother sect leader. How can he not know how to respect the old and cherish the young? This person seemed a little unruly, but his strength was unfathomable. Although he was pressuring them step by step, he actually did not have much killing intent. Shi Yunzi seemed a little unruly, but his strength was unfathomable. Even though he was pressuring them, he actually didn't have much of a murderous intent. While Chu Xiu was thinking, a large number of martial artists appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. As some of them were mobilized, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists, and they directly surrounded the Guangzhou torture room. Just as Chu Xiu was pondering this, a large number of cultivators appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. Furthermore, as some of them were mobilized, they were densely packed together. There were at least tens of thousands of cultivators surrounding the Guangzhou Disciplinary Hall. Just as Chu Xiu was thinking, a large number of martial artists appeared on the official road outside Guangzhou City. As some of them were mobilized, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists, and they directly surrounded the Guangzhou torture room. Shi Yunzi spread his hands casually and said, look, even if you want to agree now, I'm afraid you can't. Xiahozhen didn't care so much at this time. He directly shouted, surround Guangzhou City. Don't let a single demon go. Xiahozhen's ability to organize was quite good. The martial artists who came to participate in the alliance were reorganized into small teams by him. At this time when he gave the order, it was very orderly. Of course, he could only order people from the Xiahou clan and some martial artists from small forces. As for people like Cheng Tingshan and the others, even if he wanted to order them, they couldn't. Of course, he could only order the people on the Xiahou clan side, and some warriors from smaller forces. As for people like Cheng Tingshan and the others, even if he wanted to, he could not order them. He had always thought that his son died in the hands of Lin Yi of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't find anyone to take revenge on, so he could only give up. He had always thought that his son had died in the hands of Lin Yi of the Yinma clan, but he couldn't find anyone to take revenge on, so he could only give up. It was not until Chu Xiu's identity was exposed that he realized that his enemy was actually so close to him. However, Xiahozhen wasn't Nie Renlong. His heart was much harder than Nie Renlong's. Although Xiahou Wujiang was the most outstanding of his son's death was still not as important as his own power. This time, he put in so much effort to launch the Eastern Qi Alliance. In fact, 99% of the reason was because he wanted to enhance his reputation and position in the Xiahou clan. Revenge for his son was only a very small part of it. Xiahozhen stood up and said coldly, Chu Xiu, when you were running amok and killing innocent people in the past, did you ever think that you would have such a day? The cycle of cause and effect, retribution. Now, your retribution has come. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, Xiahozhen, you people always like to do these hypocritical things before the battle starts. You put yourself above righteousness and make it seem like you're so noble. In fact, everyone has done a lot of dirty things. Xiahozhen, do you dare to slap your conscience and say that you haven't done a single evil thing? Ridiculous. Xiahozhen sneered. You have a sharp tongue. After saying that, Xiahozhen directly turned his eyes to Chu Wuji and said in a deep voice, for so many years your Yinma clan has been hiding in the dark. Everyone has minded their own business. But this time, Chu Xiu has gone too far. The righteous martial arts world will definitely not tolerate it. Chu Wuji, you are an understanding person. Hand over Chu Xiu and your Yinma clan will withdraw from the Guangzhou torture hall. Everyone will still mind their own business. Otherwise, your Yinma clan has been recuperating for such a long time. I'm afraid that this time, your vitality will be greatly damaged. Shi Yunzi, who was standing to the side, also leaned on the pure yang sword and said with a smile, that's right. Fighting and killing are quite boring. Why don't we all sit down, drink some wine and have a good discussion? Everyone present looked at Shi Yunzi with a strange expression. Where did this weirdo come from? Even in Chunyang Dao sect, apart from the current sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, no one knew about Shi Yunzi's background, let alone outsiders. Even Chu Wuji had only vaguely heard some rumors, but he did not know Shi Yunzi's name. However, although the people present did not know Shi Yunzi's background, a martial Dao master of Chunyang Dao sect would definitely not be a weakling. Su Yangzi's eyebrows twitched at the side. If Shi Yunzi had not displayed his extremely powerful strength and saved him just now, he would even have the heart to curse now. Now, Shi Yunzi's behavior was simply a disgrace to the Chunyang Dao sect. That was Chunyang Dao sect's most precious divine weapon, the Pure Yang sword, which was ranked 5th in the world-famous sword manual. In the end, it was being used as a crutch by Shi Yunzi. What a scandal! Xia Hozhen glanced at Shi Yunzi. He did not understand this guy's background, so he did not pay attention to him. He asked the Yinma clan to hand over Chu Xiu not because he did not want to fight and kill, but because he did not want to suffer too heavy a loss on his side. After all, although they were in an alliance, most of them were disciples of the Xiahou clan. Moreover, Xia Hozhen also wanted to gain a reputation of subduing the enemy without fighting. Chu Wuji chuckled and said, I'm indeed a sensible person. Because I'm a sensible person, I know that this time, the Yinma clan cannot retreat, and will not retreat. Since when did the people of Jianghu have the impression that the Yinma clan must lurk in the dark to survive? Xia Hozhen, you should know that this matter has not been between you and Chu Xiu from the beginning. It involves the entire Yinma clan. Do you think I will retreat? Chu Xiu stepped forward and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said, Xia Hozhen, don't talk nonsense. You are too slow. I have been waiting for you for a long time. If I had known that you were so slow, I would have personally led people to Eastern Qi to find you. Chu Xiu pointed at his head and sneered. Don't all of you want to kill me, Chu Xiu? My head is right here. I'd like to see who has the life to take it. Before Xia Hozhen could say anything, a person beside him stepped forward and said coldly, I'll take it. In an instant, the whistling sword qi exploded, turning into a sky full of sword will that danced and circled around Shen Bai's body. As he walked towards Chu Xiu, the sword qi directly crushed down. Seeing Shen Bai's sudden attack, Xia Hozhen was caught off guard. However, the Yinma clan did not retreat. They had no other choice but to fight. Therefore, Xia Hozhen waved his hand and shouted in a low voice, Attack! As soon as he finished speaking, the warriors beside him had already rushed forward. At the same time, the city gates of Guanzhong opened wide. The warriors belonging to the hidden devil lineage and Chu Xiu's subordinates were all mobilized to meet the enemy without fear of death. However, the Yinma clan and Chu Xiu's side had already begun to show signs of weakness. They seemed to be unable to resist. Originally, there were many people in the Guanzhong torture room. However, there were not many people who were truly loyal to Chu Xiu and would die for him. Therefore, Chu Xiu could only transfer the others to other places in Guanzhong to guard. Only his trusted aides were left, but they were still at a disadvantage in terms of numbers and strength. Chapter 658. Shen Bai had a deep hatred for Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu did not have much of an impression of Shen Bai. Ever since he stepped into the Jianghu, the number of people who had died in his hands was uncountable, let alone Shen Bai, who had been crippled by him after just one attack. Therefore, it was not until Shen Bai stood up and attacked that Chu Xiu was stunned for a moment before he realized who Shen Bai was. At the same time, a look of surprise appeared on his face. In the past, he had crippled Shen Bai, but in the end, not only did Shen Bai recover his cultivation after such a short period of time, but he had also mastered such a powerful sword technique. How did he do it? Chu Xiu did not have time to investigate further. Endless Buddhist light burst out from his body, and the golden Buddhist light was as hot as fire, releasing endless power. The shadow of Vairocana appeared behind Chu Xiu, and the Buddhist light illuminated the world. Sun switching technique. The sound of Buddhist chanting rang out, and the endless Buddhist light came. The sword qi melted, and it was all blocked by the Buddhist light. The boundless majesty even caused the expression of the smiling Maitreya monk below to change. He even thought that he was facing the first seat of the Great Light Temple's 6 great martial academies. In the face of a pure strength martial technique like the sun-switching technique, Shenbai's expression did not change, but his heart was faintly shaken, and there was a look of shock in his eyes. After just one exchange, he had already discovered that in terms of strength, he was not as good as Chu Xiu. A sword technique like the 10,000 ancestral swords was indeed extremely strong, and he had comprehended it by chance. However, he was only at the entry level, and he was still far from mastering it. However, no matter how strong a martial technique was, it still needed strength to support it. With the 10,000 ancestral swords, his instantaneous explosive power was enough to instantly kill a new martial arts master like Su Beigui, but it could not deal with people with strong strength. Chu Xiu took a step forward, and the Buddhist light around him dissipated. He casually pointed out with a finger, and the Buddhist light turned into demonic energy. The immortal slaughtering finger descended, and black ripples appeared in the void. Everywhere it passed, even the chi of heaven and earth was extinguished by the extreme killing intent. The fogbow sword stretched out, and countless sword chis circled and danced around Shenbai. They were so densely packed that even Shenbai's figure could not be seen. They blocked in front of him, helping him to block the power of Chu Xiu's finger. The 10,000 swords returned to origin, and the myriad of sword skills combined into one, creating endless transformations. However, under Chu Xiu's power, the countless sword chis were constantly being melted away by the nirvana finger. Shenbai frowned deeply. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Chu Xiu's strength had somewhat exceeded his expectations. He had been in closed-door training for such a long time, and Chu Xiu, a former opponent, had obtained even more power than he had in the Jianghu. At this moment, when Shenbai was facing Chu Xiu, he even felt a sense of helplessness like when Chu Xiu was facing Zhongxian in the past. Back when Chu Xiu fought with Zhongxian, Chu Xiu could rely on his powerful martial skills and explosive power to fight evenly with Zhongxian in the early stages. However, in the later stages, with Zhongxian's profound foundation of power, he could forcibly drag Chu Xiu to death. Now when Shenbai was facing Chu Xiu, he was in an even more disadvantageous position. Chu Xiu's foundation of power was more profound than his, but his explosive power was not any weaker. The sword intent around Shenbai's body was raised to the limit. 10,000 strands of sword chi spiraled around him, and every strand of sword chi contained the might of the way of the sword that Shenbai had bestowed upon him. For a moment, he was evenly matched with Chu Xiu. At this moment, the people below were also fighting fiercely. Chu Wuji was the first to make a move, standing in front of Shi Yunzi. This person's power was unfathomable, and the only person present who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him in terms of cultivation was Chu Wuji. Moreover, Shi Yunzi was holding the pure yang sword in his hand, and he posed the greatest threat among all the people present. Looking at Chu Wuji, who was charging at him with a murderous aura, Shi Yunzi shook his head helplessly and said, "I'm just here to watch the show. Why are you targeting me?" However, even though he said that, he still held the pure yang sword in his hand and charged at Chu Wuji. Mr. Lu followed closely behind Chu Xiu to block Xin Yangzi, while Mei Qinglian faced Xiahou Zhen. Xiahou Shi's spirit control art was extremely evil, but it was completely suppressed by Mei Qinglian's great beauty art. She could not unleash much of its power at all. Lu Hongya, who was hiding in the dark, launched a sneak attack on Cheng Tingshan, but she was suppressed by Cheng Tingshan with several moves, and was immediately at a disadvantage. Speaking of which, Lu Hongya was the most unlucky one among Chu Xiu's subordinates. Although he was a newly advanced martial Dao master, he was not the kind of person who was particularly weak. However, among the people Chu Xiu had offended, almost none of them were weak. They were all martial arts grandmasters from large sects, and some were even famous figures on the Fengyan list. This made things very awkward for Lu Hongya. He could barely defeat any of them. It would be good enough if he could guarantee that he would not die, let alone help Chu Xiu. On the other hand, there were many people from the Eastern Qi sect. Wang Shuangjuan and Qi Jian, who represented the crown prince, looked at each other and directly charged at Chu Xiu. How could the three of them be no match for Chu Xiu when they worked together? The two long swords on Wang Shuangjuan's back shone with a scorching yang aura. Different from the pure yang qi of the Chunyang Dao sect, the sword qi on Wang Shuangjuan's long swords was mixed with a trace of heat, and the power to suppress demons and kill evil was also extremely powerful. Qi Jian pinched a Buddhist seal with his hand, and thousands of rays of Buddhist light burst out, turning into a handprint, and slapped at Chu Xiu. One of them was Shenbai, who was no weaker than a martial arts grandmaster, and the other two were not unknown in the Jianghu. The pressure on Chu Xiu instantly increased to the extreme. It was a joke in the Jianghu that martial arts grandmasters besieged a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and men realm. However, based on what Chu Xiu had done, who would really regard him as a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and men realm? Therefore, Wang Shuangjuan and the others did not feel the slightest burden when they attacked. In an instant, instead of retreating, Chu Xiu advanced. The human puppet appeared in front of Qi Jian, and the incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao crawled out. It opened its mouth, and the power of the hungry ghost devoured everything. The endless Buddhist light was swallowed into its mouth. Not only was it not affected, but the incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao even burped, and it looked at Qi Jian even more greedily. At the same time, Chu Xiu performed the mental demon rotation technique to the extreme. The soul-suppressing Hades song was played, and waves of evil power rushed at Wang Shuangjuan and Shenbai, causing them to groan and slow down. Neither of them had cultivated primordial soul secret techniques, so their resistance to primordial soul secret techniques, like the soul-suppressing Hades song, was weaker. Taking advantage of this moment of delay, Chu Xiu pinched the formless sealing handprint, and the universe reversed. Under the handprint, everything was twisting and spinning. The ring turned into Mount Meru, the universe, and the 5 skandhas were all empty. Within the formless sealing handprint, all power dissipated. From Chu Xiu's point of view, he had expended a lot of energy to attack just now. However, from the perspective of others, it had only been a short moment. In reality, however, it had been extremely dangerous. After repelling 3 people at the same time, just as Chu Xiu was about to heave a sigh of relief, a ripple appeared in the air. It was a very small ripple, but Chu Xiu suddenly noticed it. In that instant, Chu Xiu did not hesitate. He used the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme. What he saw was a shockingly powerful sword qi. No one could have imagined that such a powerful sword qi would actually be hidden under such a seemingly inconspicuous and weak fluctuation. If it wasn't for Chu Xiu's incomparably sensitive perception and the heaven's sun gazing at air, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Just as Chu Xiu was about to use the speed of the internal binding handprint to dodge in advance, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the sword qi. The long sword lightly pointed, as if to break a surface. The tip of the sword shattered the ripple in the void. In an instant, the sword qi was like a mirror, shattering with a loud bang. The figure in front of the sword qi was Fang Qi Xiao, who was holding a long sword and had a rare solemn expression on his face. An angry voice said, "Fang Qi Xiao, what the hell do you want? The sect has already confined you, yet you still dare to run out?" The head of the Xingjian Hall of Sword King City, Invisible Sword by Qian, appeared from the side with an angry face. In Jianghu, only Bai Qian's invisible sword could be so dangerous. The sword qi was hidden in the void, making it impossible for people to detect it. If it wasn't for Chu Xiu's sun gazing at air, this invisible sword would have fallen on his body before Chu Xiu could have noticed it. Sword King City itself had enmity with Chu Xiu. Among the disciples of Sword King City, Great Light Sword Fei Mo, who was on the Longhu list in the previous generation, had been crippled by Chu Xiu. After all, Fang Qi Xiao and Chu Xiu had become friends. Although Sword King City was overbearing, they would still give Chu Xiu face and let this matter pass. However, Chu Xiu had openly killed Lin Kaiyun in front of everyone in the minor fan heaven. This was something that Sword King City absolutely could not tolerate. Putting aside the fact that Lin Kaiyun was an outstanding figure in Sword King City, second only to 7th Young Master Fang, just the fact that Chu Xiu had repeatedly killed the people of Sword King City was something that Sword King City could not tolerate. Given Sword King City's style of doing things, they didn't care whether Lin Kaiyun wanted to kill Chu Xiu first, and was killed by Chu Xiu. According to Sword King City's way of doing things, even if Chu Xiu was the victim, he couldn't kill Lin Kaiyun first. It was up to Sword King City to decide whether Lin Kaiyun should be killed or punished for his crimes. Chu Xiu was not qualified to judge him. However, Sword King City had encountered some problems after the minor fan heaven, so they hadn't had the time to look for trouble with Chu Xiu. Moreover, Feng Qishao had also been secretly obstructing them, so Sword King City had put this matter aside for the time being. However, Chu Xiu's identity had been exposed this time, which was equivalent to courting death. Sword King City had no reason to not take action. Although Feng Qishao had also been involved this time, Sword King City couldn't let Feng Qishao do as he pleased. Therefore, Sword King City had directly punished Feng Qishao with confinement. Before this matter was resolved, Feng Qishao was not allowed to come out of seclusion. However, Bai Qian hadn't expected that Feng Qishao would dare to disobey the sect's order and come out of seclusion to stop Chu Xiu. Chapter 659. Feng Qishao stood in front of Bai Qian. Actually, he was also very conflicted. He didn't have many friends, but Chu Xiu was one of them. Therefore, Feng Qishao really didn't want Chu Xiu to have a conflict with Sword King City. If an ordinary small sect had a disciple like Feng Qishao, then they would definitely listen to Feng Qishao's orders. This small grudge could be completely forgotten. But what kind of sect was Sword King City? It was one of the 5 great sword sects that had dominated the Western Desert for over 1,000 years. It even had the strength to contend for the position of the leader of the 5 great sword sections. The sect had countless experts. For a sect like Sword King City, face was very important. Sword King City could listen to Feng Qishao as much as possible in trivial matters. However, Feng Qishao's words weren't very useful when it came to matters related to Sword King City's face. Sword King City had confined Feng Qishao because they were afraid that he would fall into a dilemma. However, they hadn't expected that Feng Qishao would still come. Looking at Bai Qian, Feng Qishao shook his head and said, "See, Chief, I won't talk about right and wrong. If you make a move against Brother Chu and he doesn't die, then he will definitely become a great enemy of Sword King City in the future. I don't understand one thing. Is it worth it to make a great enemy for the sake of face? You've seen Brother Chu's strength and potential. Whether it's a friend or an enemy, I dare say that his future achievements won't be any weaker than Zhang Qingxin." Bai Qian said coldly, "So what? If you hadn't stopped him, Chu Xiu would have died a long time ago. How could he have a future?" Feng Qishao smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu won't die. See, Chief, please stop. Just give me face, alright?" Others might not know about the heaven's sun gazing at air, but Feng Qishao, who also cultivated the Karma Sword Dao, knew about it. Even if he hadn't intercepted Bai Qian's sword earlier, Chu Xiu would still have been able to dodge it by relying on his strange Dao of Karma cultivation technique. Feng Qishao had taken the initiative to intercept Bai Qian because he wanted to smooth things over. Now that he had helped Chu Xiu stop Bai Qian, this matter would be over, and Sword King City would have one less enemy in the future. Although Feng Qishao was usually unruly, it didn't mean that he didn't understand the ways of the world. However, it seemed like Bai Qian didn't see through his hidden meaning. He thought Bai Qian was protecting Chu Xiu. In fact, Feng Qishao was also protecting Sword King City. After cultivating the Karma Sword Dao for such a long time, although Feng Qishao didn't know anything about divination, he had a vague understanding of karma. Or perhaps it could be said that it was a very strange feeling. He could sense that if Sword King City really became mortal enemies with Chu Xiu, then the consequences for Sword King City wouldn't be good. Bai Qian waved his hand and said coldly, "Seventh young master, I can let you do as you please. I didn't even punish you for stealing the sword embryo of the Xingjian Hall to drink. However, this matter is related to the face of Sword King City, and it's not something you can interfere in. Regardless of whether it's me or the other seniors of Sword King City, we didn't force you to fight Chu Xiu. We did it for the sake of your face and not to put you in a dilemma. But you shouldn't be unable to differentiate good from bad." Bai Qian's words were harsh enough. Over the years, the seniors of Sword King City had only reprimanded Feng Qishao because of his misbehavior. They had never said such harsh words. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Brother Feng, please step aside. The sect is the sect, and you are you. I will naturally resolve my enmity with Sword King City. You don't need to interfere. Moreover, you've seen the situation. There are so many people who want to kill me, so Bai Qian won't make a difference. Honestly speaking, Chu Xiu was very touched that Feng Qixiao was willing to go this far. Most people in the Jianghu had many friends and brothers. But in fact, apart from independent cultivators, most people prioritized their sects or families. Feng Qixiao was sandwiched between him and the sect. It was already good enough that he didn't choose to stand on the sect's side and become enemies with him. Now that Feng Qixiao was standing on Bai Qian's side, it was already benevolent of him. Feng Qixiao shook his head. He didn't say anything to Chu Xiu. Instead, he took a deep breath and said to Bai Qian, Chief, since you want to restore Sword King City's face, then I'll do it. Brother Chu killed a young disciple of Sword King City. As a senior of Sword King City, if you join forces with others to attack Brother Chu, the people of the Jianghu will say that Sword King City is bullying the weak and doesn't follow the rules. After saying that, Feng Qixiao glanced at Wang Shuangjuan and the others and said, Others might be shameless, but my Sword King City won't. Wang Shuangjuan revealed a trace of anger on his face. Even Qi Jian, who always had a smile on his face, gradually disappeared. However, he didn't dare to say anything. Wang Shuangjuan was just a rogue cultivator. Even if he was now the crown prince's subordinate, it didn't mean that he was a member of the Eastern Qi imperial court. Qi Jian might be strong, but his great wisdom temple couldn't compare to Sword King City. In fact, it couldn't even compare to one of the 4 major sword halls of Sword King City. Even if Feng Qixiao ridiculed them in front of their faces, they didn't dare to say anything. On the contrary, Shenbai didn't care. Since Shenbai came out of seclusion and saw the hypocrisy of the world and the death of his master, his mentality had changed a lot. If it was the previous Shenbai, he would definitely seek revenge on Chu Xiu after coming out of seclusion. He would fight one-on-one fairly and kill Chu Xiu to wash away the humiliation. But now, Shenbai only cared about the results and didn't care about the process. As long as he could kill Chu Xiu and help Azure Wave Sword Sect gain prestige, he didn't mind besieging Chu Xiu. Bai Qian frowned and said, What do you mean? Feng Qixiao said in a solemn voice, I'll go have a one-on-one battle with Brother Chu, regardless of victory or defeat. This matter will be considered completely settled. Bai Qian frowned and said, You want to go easy? Feng Qixiao's expression was solemn as he said, Seat Master, don't worry. I won't go easy on this kind of thing. If I have the slightest bit of mercy, can't Chief Master still not see it? Seeing Feng Qixiao's appearance, Bai Qian could only nod and said, All right, as you wish then. In fact, Bai Qian was still more willing to make a move directly and kill Chu Xiu. It wasn't that he didn't care about the reputation of bullying the weak, but in this kind of situation, no one would treat Chu Xiu as a junior martial artist. However, looking at Feng Qixiao's current intentions, if Bai Qian insisted on making a move, Feng Qixiao might cause some trouble. So Bai Qian decided to just let him be. Bai Qian had watched Feng Qixiao grow up in Sword King City, so he knew what kind of character Feng Qixiao had. On the surface, Feng Qixiao was always laughing and joking all day long. He didn't even have the dignity of a eldest senior brother in Sword King City. However, once he became serious, he would be stubborn to the extreme. And even 9 bulls couldn't pull him back. Wang Shuangjuan and the others frowned. Feng Qixiao wanted to fight Chu Xiu? However, it didn't matter. Their goal was to kill Chu Xiu and destroy the Guanzhong torture room. If they couldn't kill Chu Xiu for the time being, then they could just kill someone else. Therefore, Wang Shuangjuan and the others subconsciously looked in the direction of Chu Wuji's group, ready to lend a hand. But at this time, Feng Qixiao suddenly said, First seat, help me stop them. If I say it's fair, then it must be fair. If they go to deal with someone else and cause Chu Xiu to be distracted, then wouldn't I become an accomplice? That's not fair. Bai Qian nodded indifferently. Sword King City's position wasn't that firm. From the beginning, Sword King City didn't come here to kill Devil. It was purely to resolve personal grievances. The fate of the Yinma clan and the existence of the Guanzhong torture room weren't Sword King City's concern. Wang Shuangjuan angrily said, Isn't your Sword King city a bit too overbearing? You won't kill Chu Xiu, but you won't allow us to kill other Devil Dao villains. Bai Qian sneered and said, Are you the first person to know that my Sword King city is overbearing? If you think you have the strength to challenge Sword King city, then fine, I'll accompany you. Just now Chu Xiu fought 1 against 3. I also want to see what it feels like to fight 1 against 3. Wang Shuangjuan and Qi Jian's faces turned red with anger. As Sword King city's first seat, Bai Qian naturally wasn't weak. But they weren't nobodies either, so they might be able to defeat him. But the other side had used Sword King city to suppress them. That was a bit too shameless. Unfortunately, they didn't dare to challenge Sword King city. Turning around, Feng Qishao looked at Chu Xiu and sighed. But then he smiled and said, Brother Chu, you should know that I've wanted to fight you for a long time. After all, there are only a few people in Jianghu who have cultivated Karma Dao to our level. I'm not familiar with Li Feilian. Moreover, his throwing knives are meant to take people's lives when they leave their sheaths. But I'm too familiar with you, so I'm too embarrassed to fight him. But now I finally have the chance. Feng Qishao unsheathed his sword and looked at Chu Xiu with a solemn expression. Brother Chu, I won't hold back this time. Holding the heavenly demon dance in his hand, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Me too. Everyone had a competitive heart. Chu Xiu and Feng Qishao were indeed friends, but that didn't mean that they didn't have such competitive hearts. Friends like Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu, whose strength was much lower than Chu Xiu's, were convinced by Chu Xiu. But Feng Qishao was different. Feng Qishao was happy for Chu Xiu that he could reach his current strength, but at the same time, Feng Qishao didn't think that he was weaker than Chu Xiu. Feng Qishao stabbed out with his sword. Although his sword seemed light, every time it vibrated, it seemed to conform to some kind of law between heaven and earth. With a light tap of his sword, Chu Xiu instantly felt as though his surroundings had been locked down. Everything in the world was a sword. No matter which direction he attacked from, the force of the sword would rain down like a torrential storm. After not seeing him for a long time, Feng Qishao's sword Dao had taken another step forward. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.